players gather to cast powerful spells, some of the oldest and most revered in the history of Magic the Gathering. Careful study, Tamiyo Inquisitive Student, Tainted Indulgence, and many others. Battling head-to-head in brutal combat, they all have one thing in common: to uphold their legacy and the search for eternal glory.
The Eternal Glory podcast is brought to you by the minds behind Bosch and Roll on YouTube, Arabian University, and theepicstorm.com. This episode is sponsored by Moxfield and financial advisor and certified financial planner Nicholas Robb.
Hello, and welcome to episode 164 of the Eternal Glory podcast, Post-Reanimator Impressions. We've already recorded 30 minutes of introduction and banter for the week, available in our supporter-exclusive pre-show. Check out patreon.com/eternalglory to gain access, or join as a YouTube member for the same content on YouTube instead. As always, I'm Phil Gallagher, a.k.a. Thraben U.
I am Brian Coval, a.k.a. Bosch and Roll.
And I am Brian Cook of the Epic Storm.
Shout out to all our new Patreon and YouTube members since the last episode. We've got Alex N. We've got Aladdin out there stealing artifacts. Take it easy, Aladdin. Gaming with Thunder, Grinthex, Brian D, Andrew J, John A, John L, John S -J. That's a lot of Johns in a row. And all of those people will get to find out how much Brian pays for caulk in the Lowe's parking lot.
Life happens. You can't predict the unexpected, but you can prepare. Edward Jones, financial advisor and certified financial planner Nick Robb can help you with your financial goals, planning with life's ups and downs in mind. Call 314-377-9524. Email nicholas.ropp@edwardjones.com. That's nicholas.raupp@edwardjones.com. Or visit www.edwardjones.com/nicholas-ropp to get started. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
And if you're interested in advertising to 10,000 plus Eternal gamers every episode, reach out to us. We're always accepting new sponsors. Gentlemen, you pay for caulk one time at a Home Depot and you never hear the end of it.
You were talking about how you were going to go back and get more. I don't know what you want from me, but let's not spoil all of the pre-show. People got to pay for this content.
Exactly.
Just like you did at the Lowe's parking lot.
One quick announcement is, as you're listening to this, I actually don't have internet right now, so I'm recording this from my phone and just chatting with the guys while recording through my computer. It's a little bit of a hack job, so bear with me tonight. I'm going to be relying on Brian and Phil for some of the data and card, information, that sort of thing.
We got you. And we're also recording a day early because I'm leaving for Eternal Week in Italy several hours before our normal slot. So we're all out of sorts, but hopefully it doesn't show too much in the episode.
Yeah, I got off an airplane 2 hours ago. Slept for an hour and a half of those hours. Let's go, baby.
Chaos reigns. Do it live.
Let's get directly into this. So our last episode was 24 hours after the BNR update. So now we have some real matches in under our belts. I think I've got 6 or 7 leagues in under. I know Brian has been testing like an absolute sicko. Bryant has had some time to do some legacy challenges. So let's start with the bird's eye view. What are your just general big thoughts on the format right now, 2 weeks in?
I mean, I'll say right away, it's better. Just capital B, better. It is better than it was. Whatever we think about what might be left to be done, or, we didn't get the whole ban list we wanted. Legacy feels so much better to play right now than it did 3 weeks ago.
100% co-sign that.
I will say, I think that Legacy is a lot bluer, at least in my experience playing leagues and challenges. Control is back. People are really looking forward to being control gamers at the moment, whether it's Jeskai Wizards, Up the Beanstalk, Grixis Control. People are out here trying to grind.
Yes, anytime a ban shakes up Legacy or a new card is printed or anything happens, people want to see if their favorite decks still work the way they remember them. And I will say that the format is slower. It is better. I'm not sure that the door is quite open for control the way that people like me would hope. But yes, I have queued into beanstalk decks and various different colors of wizards and stuff over the past 3 weeks, much more than I was before. Death and Taxes too. I've actually queued into Death and Taxes multiple times online, and I think it was close to 0 over the 6 months before then.
I think things are objectively slower without the Entomb Reanimate or Entomb Animate Dead button just being threatened after every single blue fetch land is played out, and the black ones too, I guess. So I have really felt like my opening hand evaluation has changed a lot in the past 2 weeks, where a lot of times it was like, if I keep this and we are playing against Reanimator, I am stone cold dead. Now I feel like the range of keepable hands is more acceptable, and you have more time to set things up with your ponders or hope for some redraws that are important to make your hand come together.
Right. One thing that was very apparent to me in the previous format, which had not always been before, is your sequence between if you have one land, a threat, and a Thoughtseize. And in the past, you might want to develop that threat and then Thoughtseize them on the next turn or even the turn after to make sure that threat keeps going. Whereas in the past 6 months or so, you have to Thoughtseize first because you might just be dead. And now it's actually, there's a textured decision to, do I want to take a poke at this hand or do I want to get my thing down and start moving? Which even just like that, the breathing room of one single turn to develop anything before you have to Thoughtseize your opponent, it's a tangible difference.
There's a lot of nuance with Tamiyo hands in particular, I think, in that regard.
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about Tamiyo this episode, no doubt.
Yeah, so let's just kind of put a pin in that there. Tamiyo will get a lot of attention today.
She has a whole section coming later.
Well-deserved attention at that. But Nadu is also gone, and as someone who likes playing those like slower, dirtily Death and Taxes, Maverick style decks, Nadu being gone is so much pressure off of those sorts of decks, because Nadu just absolutely trashed any non-blue decks, and the like data from the previous EW made that extremely clear. And the Nadu decks were simultaneously able to often outvalue the control decks with things like Nadu and occasionally Plagon, just totally invalidating the up the beanstalk style dirtle. And with the early game pressure being taken off with Entomb Reanimate and some of that late game inevitability being taken off of Nadu, the format is wider open than it was previously, even if there are still some very clear better things to be doing.
Yeah, the Nadu, we just talked about Entomb and Reanimate as like, as soon as your opponent plays Pluto Delta Pass, you're immediately like, well, I could die at any point. How do I navigate this? The Nadu was, if you saw Tundra and or Tropical Island, you had the same experience, but in the inverse. It's like, what turn am I going to die? Is it turn 3? Is it turn 4? And how long are they going to sit with that potential Nadu in their hand until they're just caked up and ready to go? Like Reanimator, they do have to invest something somewhere, and certain things like Fairy Macabre could make that tricky, and Reanimator generally less favored as the game skews into infinity, like 6 turns, 8 turns, 10 turns. That's usually better for the non-Reanimator player if that's how the game is going. But Nadu could just bank that thing, distract you with other stuff, and get you the second you blink. And Reanimator had a taste of that too, but Nadu was just, it just felt so inevitable where, you know, they're just waiting to find the Cavern of Souls. They're waiting to have Shuko so they don't need to protect a Nomad from a Bowmaster. It's just, that's the direction they would grind into. And you just knew it was there. You knew it was there the whole time. You're just taking 6 a turn from Scythecat Cub because you know you can't use your swords to plowshares. That shit sucked. But now those decks have to commit an engine at some point. And it's kind of fun. It's like you see a tropical island and a tundra and you're like, am I going to see a Felia? Am I going to see an Up the Beanstalk? Do they have both? Are they going to start playing some Planeswalkers? Am I going to see a Glistener Elf? Like, where's this going? What a delight. Now we can kind of explore the space together rather than just know that this bullshit is pending and there's very little I can do about it. Bryant, what has your experience has been like?
So I don't want to say too much before we get into the decks, because I have found, well, you mentioned Reanimator having to make compromises, and I have some opinions on that. Should I hold that a little bit, or am I free to rip?
Yeah, I mean, if it is in the context of general impressions about the format without getting into the nitty gritty of Reanimator yet, because we can do that later.
I think I'll hold it for later then.
Okay, all right.
I think general impressions of the format is when I'm playing leagues, it feels like almost every deck is a Tamiyo deck to me. And I understand that not all Tamiyo decks are the same. Some are Jeskai Wizards, some are Cephalid Breakfast using Tamiyo, sometimes they're Doomsday. But it feels like right now, if you're not playing Tamiyo, you're probably doing it wrong. And I don't love that feeling as someone who isn't playing Tamiyo, but I think my honest opinion is if I was playing Eternal Weekend Europe, you should be playing a Tamiyo deck. And I just don't love that you're sort of priced into doing so.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. I will say I am testing for Eternal Weekend. This isn't theoretical for me. I'm in the shit right now doing that. And it's a non-Tamiyo deck is at the top of the list of we must be able to beat this deck, and that's Is It Delver. So that is a fast deck. It's a disruptive deck. Doesn't even have time for Tamiyo. It's busy killing you. However, we are also acknowledging in all of our testing that we have to be able to answer a Tamiyo as well. So I think the default best top deck, or at least like the big winner that everyone would recognize as being an obvious winner, does not play Tamiyo, but every deck like it does.
And many of the brew and janky decks that I have been playing have also been shoving Tamiyo in there because the opportunity cost of doing so is so low. I think I've played Tamiyo 8 Cast, Tamiyo Miracles, Tamiyo Lands, and Tamiyo Show and Tell already in like the 7 leagues that I have recorded. Good card is good. Play it while it's legal.
It's like the famous 5-0 with Oko burn that was posted right before Oko got banned. That was awesome.
I think Is It Delver is a really good measuring stick for how viable your deck is right now. Because to beat that deck, you need to be able to answer singular threats. You need to have some diversity of removal so you can deal with Corey Steelcutter. You have to win the game quickly enough that you're not going to get burnt out by lightning bolts or price of progresses or whatever. And I am happy that the measuring stick for the format right now is not just another default blue-black pile, given where we have been for the past year.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people, I know it is popular to malign the Wasteland Days threat Force of Will package, because it is usually among the best things to be doing in Legacy. But if those cards are backing up creatures that have to be on the battlefield and then attack you for 20 over a series of multiple turns, I'm happy with that. Like, we're playing one of Magic's most powerful formats, and if decks are being asked to interact with a combat board state instead of whatever the hell's been going on the last 6 months, I'll take it.
100% co-sign that.
Bryant, you have any thoughts on this before we move into more specifics?
I mean, I sort of agree with you. I think the only thing where I disagree is that I do run into a decent amount of the Is It Delver or Is It Corey Steele deck that's also playing Tamiyo. Like, a lot of them don't get me wrong. But some people do, so I still sort of consider them Tamiyo decks or like partial Tamiyo decks, even if the Tamiyos are a little bit off plan. Because at its core, I think the Is It Corey Steele deck, it's a tried and true tempo deck, like in the traditional sense, but it's a little bit more aggro than the tempo we've been grown accustomed to over the last 7 years with the card advantage engines, if you know what I'm trying to say here.
Right. Yeah, it's a different thing. And yeah, there are a few flex slots in the blue-red shell where some people are playing Unholy Heat or Chain Lightning or something like that. And some people register 1 or 2 Tamiyos as just something else your deck can present if the game goes a certain way. I personally don't like that, but yes, Tamiyo can certainly be put in the deck. It's a deck with Brainstorm and blue mana.
I forget who posted it, but someone had a very good social media post that was something along the lines of, has anyone found a better answer to Tamiyo other than just being on the play? And Tamiyo is going to be a central card in Legacy moving forward. We know that. And let's shout out Moxfield real quick and then get into Tamiyo. Moxfield is awesome. I was at a large convention, PAX Unplugged, over the weekend. I had a couple people say, oh, hey, I liked one of your decks. I wasn't able to find it. Where do I find that? And I just like pulled out a QR code, sent them to my Moxfield, and I'm like, everything I've ever played is here.
Yep. And this new legacy or slightly changed legacy, I have been brewing a lot. I've been building a lot, trying new stuff, and it's all on Moxfield. Been cranking it out. I've played a lot of freaking leagues over the past 2 weeks.
All right. So we're going to call this section the non-bans, and we're going to talk about how we feel about some of the cards and strategies that survived our previous BNR update, starting with good old Tamiyo. So at the biggest level, Tamiyo is getting shoved into just about any blue deck where it remotely makes sense, and it is often a central part of those game plans. So this can be everything from your tempo decks to your blue-red Flame of Honor decks to your hybrid combo decks that still have a tempo plan of some kind, like maybe Reanimator or Doomsday. You'll see it in other decks too, your show and tell decks. I played it in lands. You're going to see this everywhere right now in Legacy, and I don't know that we have settled on a best Tamiyo shell yet, but people are trying to figure it out.
Right. And I've been vocal about this, not the last ban update, but the one before, the infamous no changes ban update. I was saying Tamiyo is the most bannable card in Legacy for that update. And my opinion was not changed, was in fact hardened into even more confidence over the 5 months in between. And that is not a card that got banned. And to the surprise of no one, it's still out there. It's still ripping. And I've been telling the folks who watch my videos for this whole time, Tamiyo is what Legacy is about. You need to answer that card. And in many ways, the Entomb Reanimate package was just kind of the most egregious way you could back up a Tamiyo. And like, if this is another frog plus troll situation where 2 cards needed to go to really kill this thing all the way done. And yeah, Tamiyo's still here. And it is kind of tiresome that we're here when this issue is so obvious. But at the same time, without that oppressive, you could die at any point to 2 mana Entomb Reanimate business, without the oppressive, you could die at any point if a Nadu slips through business, we do have more room to interact with Tamiyo. Like, you can play cards like Prismatic Ending or Pyroblast that you might not have had room to put in your deck previously.
Yeah, that sideboard pressure being taken off is a really, really big deal. And I'm not going to lie, the space that I used to spend on Graveyard Hate is now cards that answer Tamiyo if I don't think my main deck is good enough at it.
Yep. Brian, I know you had thoughts about this. Let it rip. It's Tamiyo time.
So my thoughts were more around Demir Reanimator, and Tamiyo is a part of that because Tamiyo is in the Demir Reanimator decks. But, prior to the bannings, I was someone who was saying, the deck can thrive without Entomb. There's other ways you can build with like looting effects and stuff like that. And one thing that I was really vocal about was getting Reanimator to have a larger package. And part of it was you need creatures to discard from hand, that sort of thing, but all those come at a cost. And I'm becoming a little bit rambly, but my point here is there was a squeeze. What cards ended up being cut? Reanimator still exists as Demir. I mean, there's black versions too, but I'm not discussing those right now. But the card that was squeezed was Brazen Borrower, at least out of a lot of lists. I'm not saying all of them, but the majority of lists I've seen post-ban, which makes the deck weaker. Because now they don't have this perfect flex slot in the deck anymore, because something had to go in order to make room for more large creatures and more discard outlets and that sort of thing. So how this comes back to Tamiyo is there's less ways to protect Tamiyo, but there's also less ways to interact with the cards that beat Reanimator. I feel like Reanimator now is a beatable strategy, although it's still incredibly good. Like, it's out there winning challenges and 5-0 leagues. Like, it's a powerful thing. But the squeeze now of Entomb Reanimate being gone means that they lose to hate more often now, and that removal on Tamiyo or other things is more likely to be relevant.
So another thing here is that when these Reanimator decks start playing things like Faithless Looting and Careful Study that happen to draw 2 cards while also discarding 2, they're conceptually playing them to put the large creatures into the graveyard, but they conveniently also trigger Tamiyo turning into the Planeswalker. So these Reanimator decks are actually better than they were previously at utilizing Planeswalker Tamiyo.
Right. I've been playing a bit of Reanimator. I have 2 posted 5.0s with it. One really early proto list that was pretty sloppy, and the sideboard map was a mess. And then I did a lot of cleaning up and posted another one more recently. And I will just own it here. Brian's been talking for months about how looting-based Reanimator would be more interesting. And I said, I don't even think that's a deck. That's just dredge. Why would anyone do that? And I think I was operating under the presupposition that Tamiyo is also getting banned. And now that we still have Tamiyo, that is a reason to pack your deck full of draw 2 effects. And everything Bryant said about needing to play more monsters, like these lists have, I've seen 5 to 7 in the blue builds with Tamiyo. Like that's a lot. I've seen people kind of playing like 4.5, where there's like 4 big ones, then in a Borinoculus or something in the middle that is reasonably castable, but also pretty sweet to reanimate early. People are still figuring out all those numbers, but these decks, at the cost of Entomb, they have doubled their ability to flip Tamiyo on turn 2 because they have to play some large number of looting effects as well. And that is, it's different. It is easier to interact with. This deck is not broken. It is, but I don't know that it's fine either. You know, like it is kind of like, I mean, Carmen said in the ban update that they went after Entomb rather than trying to ban one of the other pieces because people are looking for a change, and it would be a huge bummer to ban something and still have Tempo Reanimator be the best deck. And Tempo Reanimator is still very good.
So as someone who has played a couple Reanimator leagues, which side of Tamiyo do you actually want early on? Are you more interested in Turbo Flip, or are you more interested in, I want to acquire these clues, so if I don't string together Reanimator stuff, that like I have the endgame inevitability? Obviously, both sides of Tamiyo are ridiculously powerful. We've said previously, like, you could make all of your decisions, air quotes, wrong with Tamiyo, and the card would still be good. Conceptually, where do you think Reanimator falls on wanting to flip Tamiyo early?
I think it does want to flip Tamiyo early because if Reanimator is doing what it's supposed to be doing, it should be putting a monster in the graveyard on turn 1 or 2. And if your turn 1 play is Tamiyo and your turn 2 play is just naturally a Careful Study, a Tainted Indulgence, a Roiling Dragonstorm, anything like that, then Tamiyo is going to flip. And that puts you in the spot of the same spot the old Reanimator deck was in, that, you know, Entomb's gone, but once you discard a monster, that Tamiyo on 4 represents 2 shots at reanimating that monster.
Oh, yeah.
That play pattern's exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is how the monster gets to the graveyard and how efficiently deck building allows for that. Once it's there, this deck is identical to what it was before.
One thing that I have seen, if we're talking about the downtick of Tamiyo, is a Reanimator player not having the large monster because there's only 5 or 6 of them now and they need to loot them. And then later on, they'll draw the monster, downtick Tamiyo to get Careful Study, play the Careful Study to discard the monster, and then draw, you know, whatever cards they actually want to draw, and then reanimate the Atraxa or Archon of Cruelty that way. And it's like, oh, well, Tamiyo now gets a looting effect, which is actually better than Entomb here if they already have the monster in hand. So that's pretty impressive.
Right. And one thing that doesn't exist anymore is Entomb could put any card in your graveyard. Like, one of the dumbest things about that card, in addition to all the other dumb things about Entomb, it's any card. It's not a creature card. So 2 Entombs and a Tamiyo on 4, you Entomb the Reanimate, you minus the Tamiyo, then you Entomb the monster and then reanimate the monster. So 2 Entombs and a Tamiyo on 4 was Entomb Reanimate, one way or another. That play pattern is gone. They actually do have to do some work, but Tamiyo is still subsidizing that work in an egregious way. And all that assumes that we're interested in buying anything back, and we don't see the window where it's just like, oh, I got my Tamiyo on 6 plus, check, go, figure it out, which is, you still win if you draw half your deck. That's still true.
I'd like to loop back to a card we mentioned in the pre-show here. Katara Waterbending Master. So in case you haven't seen this one in action yet, since Avatar is new, this is 1 and a blue for a 1/3 legendary human warrior ally. Whenever you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, you get an experience counter. Whenever Katara attacks, you may draw a card for each experience counter you have. If you do, discard a card. This is something that is seeing a little bit of play in some of these experimental Reanimator shells, because I do not think we are at the point where there is a, this is the Reanimator list that everyone is going to play. We're not there yet. Have you all seen this card in action yet? I have only seen it in action in Cube.
In the pre-show, I realized that I made a mistake. I said this could be the next card to get banned in Legacy. I was not considering Tamiyo Inquisitive Student.
Yeah, you mean after Tamiyo?
Yeah, we know that shit's happening.
Okay, so after Tamiyo, I could actually see this card getting banned. It's that good. It's Dreadhorde Arcanist, reimagined. Except with the experience counters, they're on you. They're not on the creature. So if you attack with Katara, you draw 3, you discard 1 card, which could be that Archon of Cruelty or Atraxa, and then they kill your Katara. The next one you play still looks at those previous experience counters. I don't know why they keep on doing this. They should have learned from the One Ring. The One Ring counter should have been on the card or on the player. I guess it's backwards, right? They should have been on the player.
Right. I mean, experience is an existing mechanic that goes on the player. They didn't have to use experience counters, but if they're going to use that, and I don't know what's in this Avatar Eternal set. Like, this is in the bonus set of Avatar, and maybe experience is a supported thing there, where you're only meant to have one of these in your commander deck, and it just becomes a different mechanic when you get 4 of them in a 60 card deck.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. But this card is so good. Like, I could definitely see this card being banned in a year. And the fact that it acts like Psychic Frog in these Reanimator shells, it doesn't just 5 or 6 your opponent. That part is a little more like Dreadhorde Arcanist. But the fact that it's a discard outlet like Psychic Frog is very, very powerful. I'm very impressed by this card. And if I was playing Reanimator, I'd probably be trying to play 4 of it.
So here's where I was, because I have been working on Reanimator quite a bit. And Katara, we can all imagine the awesome situation where, like, you play her on 2, you force something, you daze something, you untap, and you're already gaining cards when she attacks. But she's also a 2-drop, and Legacy is really hostile to spending 2 mana on cards these days. She has no protection, no evasion. There's not even like Ward 1 on this. She's not unblockable. She doesn't get any bigger. None of that. She's also a legend. And the current Reanimator decks that are leaning heavily on Tamiyo and Atraxa are extremely soft to Karakas, as is. And if they're trying to cast spells like Tainted Indulgence, they don't get 4 Wastelands anymore. Like, the mana base, I've seen between 0 and 2 Wastelands. I've even seen Wasteland in some sideboards because they just need to beat Karakas sometimes, but they can't actually support the Wastelands they want. I think this is extending you into a place where you're weaker to things you're already weak to. And I can see the upside of this card, and I might be eating these words in a year when this card is banned and obviously broken or whatever, but this reads closer to me like a Ledger Shredder or a Mercurial Spellcaster than it does a Spell Chaser, Mercurial Spell Chaser. Remember that one?
Spell Dancer?
Maybe.
It's the one with oil counters, right?
Yeah, the oily boy, the oil rogue, the unblockable oil rogue that was also heralded as the next Dreadhorde Arcanist and is unplayable. But like Katara, when she gets going, if you're ever behind against this thing, it certainly has the Psychic Frog problem of, like, if you didn't answer it, it means you couldn't, and now I'm going to go apeshit on you. But it takes extra setup too. Like, you do have to cast spells. Like, what if you cast this with 2 forces in your hand and you're like, oh buddy, I'm going to get you, and I just don't cast a spell and I pass the turn? What if I bolt her on your turn and then you protect her, but she doesn't get experience? I think this is one of those things that we're going to have to see it play out. If people haven't figured out the play patterns and they're just getting ranched by it, or decks that don't naturally play removal, or decks that just don't have a creature that can block it, like just something with 3 power, put it in play. I don't know. Block it with another Nethergoy if it's gone. Obviously, a lot of those things could be said about Dreadhorde Arcanist as well, which turned out to be that way. But I don't know. I am lukewarm, leaning positive on this one. I'm excited to play with it, but like I said, I've been brewing a lot with Reanimator, and I just don't have room for this card in any of the Reanimator lists that I actually think are good.
I want to loop back to the design of the card here. Bryant was kind of curious, like, why are these experience counters? I believe the answer is the casual commander side of things, where if you have this as your commander, you are rewarded for accruing experience over the course of the game. Whereas if you were building this card for 60 card constructed, it would make way more sense for this to be some sort of counter that goes on the card directly.
Yeah, she also plays off of other things that give you experience. There's a bunch of legends that if you do something, you get an experience counter, and they all trigger off each other's gained experience. Like you as a player, the flavor is you as a wizard have summoned this character, and by working alongside this character, you have gained experience, and then your experience with this character improves. And like there's some like Golgari lady who, like, when a creature dies, you get experience, and in your end step you regrow a creature, but if you have 3 experience, you reanimate the creature. It's a very popular commander card. It's in my Coval deck. I just forget the name right now. But
Marin of
that's her.
Neltoth.
Yeah. Like the
Nick Fit represent players. I got you.
Yeah, this is an existing mechanic, and I guess it makes sense. But once again, here we are printing a card that makes a ton of sense for commander, and may or may not actually crack it and construct it. But that's Magic. We just got to take our medicine on that shit.
So I think I do agree with you that a lot of what you described could also have been said of Dreadhorde Arcanist when you were like, there's no evasion, you have to cast spells. I was like, literally, everyone was saying that about Dreadhorde Arcanist at the time. I think one thing that we're forgetting about is spells you can cast on your opponent's turn are not limited to counter spells like Daze or Force so well. It could be Brainstorm, Lightning Bolt, Orcish Bowmasters, because it's not creature, or it's not non-creature, it's just any spell cast. So Orcish Bowmasters, for example, it's obviously best when you can daze your opponent's spell and then immediately use the Katara the turn after. I completely get that. I'm just saying that consider Brainstorm Bolt. Like, there's a bunch of things that do it that aren't necessarily counter spells, and I think that makes the card a little bit better.
Right, and I see this card ripping in decks that want to do that. It came up in the context of Reanimator, which is currently tinging my view because I've been thinking about that deck a lot. I don't think Reanimator has room for it or is that interested in it, at least not if Reanimator is trying to send hard in game 1 and then pivot into tempo game 2. I don't think there is room for that card in 75. If you are just some blue tempo deck, if you're just like a Daze Lightning Bolt deck that wants a draw engine, maybe that's where we are. Like, if you cut 4 reanimate, 2 animate dead, 6 monsters from the deck that is visible in my head, and then you're just playing like bolts and bowmasters instead, Katara might actually be busted.
So are there any other Tamiyo things we want to talk about? We briefly alluded to the fact that some of these other combo decks are trying to shove Tamiyo in to do this same sort of tempo combo thing. We're seeing it a little bit in Doomsday. We're seeing it a little bit in Show and Tell. Any other big thoughts we want to go on here before we move on to the One Ring?
I think I've said my piece on Tamiyo over the last 8 months.
All right, then here we go. So, Mystic Forge is currently not doing that great in Legacy. The One Ring is incredibly powerful. Mystic Forge was previously very good, but the predators of the current Legacy format are things like Izzet Tempo, which is very positive versus Mystic Forge. And the people who are trying to figure out Demir Tempo are also going to be positive into the Mystic Forge deck.
Yeah, we talked quite a bit in the last one about how Izzet Delver was close but behind against Reanimator and very far behind Nadu, but very positive against Mystic Forge among the big 3 of the pre-banned format. And the 2 things that didn't get banned, if they happen to be rock and paper, then paper is going to cover rock until people figure it out again and the meta shakes back out. I think I'm probably 20, 25 leagues in over the last 3 weeks. And I think I've seen Mystic Forge once, which is a surprising number.
I'll be honest, I think it's still a little bit early to be writing Mystic Forge off. Like, it's possible that people are just like waiting for the meta to shake out before like defining the list, or when the meta does shake out, maybe the decks preying on Mystic Forge combo aren't necessarily at the top. I mentioned how I'm seeing a lot of control decks right now. What if those control decks go back in hiding, and all of a sudden Mystic Forge is coming out swinging, with big heavy fists again? So I do think that we might want to wait a little bit before we write off Mystic Forge combo as, being dead or not that good anymore. But on the same side of the coin, there are some decks that came out real hot that, people are like, oh, they'll go back into oblivion, they might hide, where I'm not so sure on those. But we'll talk about that in a minute.
Who knows? Maybe we'll have a functional metagame where the Mystic Forge deck starts doing poorly. People drop the consign to memories. Mystic Forge comes back. It is possible that we will see a little bit of that. And we are saying that it is struggling. That does not mean that it is unplayed. And there's still a decent amount of One Ring elsewhere in decks like Cloudpost that I've seen quite a bit of in leagues.
Right. Yeah. On the metagame point, if the metagame solidifies around is a Delver, and then Swords to Plowshares decks step up to handle the Delver menace, decks with high basic lane counts and good white removal, those decks suck against Mystic Forge. Like, we might actually get a little rock, paper, scissors movement going, which would be great. And Phil, you started talking about Cloudpost. This is a deck that people, it's kind of the worst kept secret in Legacy. It doesn't get a lot of glory, but every single person I know who's serious about Legacy is like, yo, have you seen this deck? This is the real deal.
Yeah, I have liked the blue-black versions. I played a mono-blue version recently, and I wished that I had the black as of the end of the league. The black is often splashing for Barrowgoyf, and I specifically like that in the current metagame, because having some life gain and board stabilization versus the blue-red Delver deck can be just very, very, very helpful. That's not to say that it's always going to go perfectly. Corey Steelcutter can be a very, very scary card, but just having something that, like, oh, I can filter into this and, Planar Nexus plus Tron land it out very quickly. And now this is bigger than Lightning Bolt already. It's a real problem. That buys me time to get to my very broken end game and get to my Glimmer Posts to gain a bunch of life.
Yeah, I've played this deck several times and have a ton of respect for it. And the things I was worried about, like the tempo decks, like the decks that can clock you and they're backed by Wasteland, I found myself just bullying those decks into the ground, especially once I board in Barrowgoyf. But even in game ones, when the game is like kind of close and they've controlled you a little bit and you just gain 7 life over 2 turns with a pair of Glimmer Posts, and then you put Ugin on the stack and their Murktide's gone, I found myself quite resilient even to aggressive double Wasteland draws. And this deck, I think it has inevitability over literally anyone. I would not want to play 10 turns of Magic against this deck with any deck I could think of in Legacy. I want them dead, basically. And maybe this is just an early metagame thing where once people adopt Price of Progresses or whatever it is that kills this deck for real, we'll just see it kind of sink back down. It's also not really putting up numbers in the challenges, which we've talked about challenges before, and they're kind of, so like leagues are just random people playing 5 matches at any time of day. Like, that's monkeys with a typewriter. Anything could happen in leagues. And then challenges are a little better than that, but still, like, going 4-2, making a challenge top 8, that's kind of a mediocre result at an FNM. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean the deck's good. And we don't have shitloads of data to really draw anything out yet. But this Cloudpost deck, I don't know that I've only beaten it with one deck, and it's the deck that I've chosen to register for Eternal Weekend Italy, like over my last few weeks, which I did reveal in the pre-show, but I'm not going to do it here. But one of the things that tipped me between my options was, like, I've been dumpstering Is it Delver and Cloudpost. With this deck, I'm going to go with this one, even though I'm aware of its other weaknesses.
So I've been watching my good friend Alex McKinley play this Azorius Blink deck in Legacy, where Alex is choosing to register 22 lands in his deck, 0 of them are Wasteland, and there's no main deck back to basics. Alex, like nobody else, pairs into the card Cloudpost like it's his job, and then complains the entire time about how Planar Nexus needs to be banned. I do not see it. I think back to basics is incredibly good against that deck, but on top of that, if you're a blue deck and you aren't registering Wastelands, it's kind of on you. I don't feel bad for you if you're not choosing to be a deck that is a known thing in Legacy because you want to run 8 basics instead of 4 or 5 or whatever the numbers might be. I just don't think that Planar Nexus is bannable as of right now. And I think if this isn't even a dig at Alex, because it's something I read a lot on Reddit as well, you can make adjustments to your deck to beat the Demir Cloudpost deck. It's very beatable. And I think that's why it's not winning in challenges, because it was doing so well for a few weeks. And then the people that are actually playing challenges adapt pretty quickly. And now it's sort of, doing fine. It's just, we need people to actually make the adjustment.
Yeah, this is a deck that will kill you if you don't know what it is. It will kill you if you're not ready. It will kill you if you don't respect it. It's also not a huge meta share. And if you decided to put your points in being more stable versus Izzet Delver and being pants down to Cloudpost, that's a choice you can make. But you do have to accept the results of that if you happen to pair into Cloudpost instead of Izzet Delver. And I personally would not leave home without respecting this deck somehow.
And the Cloudpost deck is in this really weird situation where it is often very good against established decks, and a lot of the weirdo bizarro decks that are, Life from the Loaming and Malevolent Rumbling and have just extreme consistent access to things like Wasteland and Boseiju to disrupt their lands. They end up being a dog against some of those decks.
Yep. And some goofy stuff like Narset, Hull Breacher, that sort of thing. If you can turn off their rings, they get quite a bit worse. But top decks aren't playing those. Top decks are playing Price of Progress and Lightning Bolt and 4 Wastelands, though. So there is some check there.
And Price of Progress. Oh, buddy.
Speaking of Blood Moon, Phil, tell us what's up with Red Stompy, the other ring deck.
I'm sorry, is that a deck right now? That is largely my opinion of Red Stompy in this format. If you look at something like an MTG Goldfish breakdown of the most commonly played creatures in the format, there are some red cards there and some non-blue-black cards in there. So you will see some things like Simian Spirit Guide, Dragon's Rage Channeler, Glaring Fleshraker, and Magus of the Moon. Those have penetration into the top creatures of the format right now. It's not just blue-black soup anymore, which is great. But I don't think the Red Stompy deck is particularly good. The Izzet Tempo deck is very good at getting you dead, and the Red Stompy decks aren't really the best at answering a string of monks off of Kori Steelcutter. I think if you want to be doing something in that general ballpark, you should probably be playing the Red Eldrazi deck right now, which is not actually a one-ring deck most of the time. Your flex slots are just going towards more aggression right now.
Right. Obviously, this is an Ancient Tomb Lotus Petal deck. I have seen people play the One Ring out of Eldrazi before, but that's going to come at the flex slot of something like Reality Smasher, which I've seen resurface. I've seen main deck, the Threaten guy, whatever that one's called.
That is Eldrazi Obligator. I'm going to go ahead and read that one for the pod because this has not seen too much Legacy play. So this is 2 colorless, 1 red for a 3/1 Devoid Eldrazi with haste. When you cast it, you can pay an additional 1 and an actual colorless. If you do, gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap that creature, and it gains haste until end of turn. So view this as Reality Smasher number 2. This can come down at 3 mana to just be 3 damage this turn, which is great in your deck that already has Eldrazi Linebreaker and Glaring Fleshraker that can represent a ton of damage out of nowhere. But then when you reach 5 mana on, probably turn 3, then this becomes steal your Murktide Regent, steal your Barrogoyf or whatever, and potentially just swing lethal immediately, or get a critical blocker out of the way to push more damage than you otherwise could do in that combat step.
Right. And this is such a scary card because you don't actually beat aggro decks with removal. You beat them with bigger creatures. Your removal might bridge the gap. If I had a hand versus, and I knew I was playing against Eldrazi and my hand was 4 Swords of Plowshares or 4 Tarmogoyfs, I would take the Tarmogoyfs. I think that's the better chance. And a lot of the time, your plan versus Eldrazi is Force of Will that, Fatal Push that, just get myself to a 5/5 Murktide Regent that I can put in front of them, and then they got to slow down. And the Obligator just cooks you on that turn. it 8-balls you while clearing the blocker, you're probably dead on the spot. And if not, you're dead the next turn and it's too late to stabilize.
Just a heads up in terms of flex slots. It often maths out that you don't want an entire playset of Eldrazi Obligator. 2 or 3, I think, tends to be more common than the entire playset right now.
Phil, myself and the fans at home have a question for you. I have been pairing into Eldrazi a lot, and I keep on having this thing happen to me. All right?
All right.
My opponent plays a Chalice of the Void for 0. They then play their own spells into the Chalice of the Void for 0. Why do they keep doing this?
I think a lot of players forget about their own chalices because your chalice often does not matter to you. Like, conceptually, when you look at the deck, like, you should not care about a chalice on 0. You should not care about a chalice on 1. You often don't care about chalice on 2, but you still might have just some players who are, kind of casually playing the deck who mess things up. But sometimes it is intentional and good, because if you have a chalice on 0, you can still cast a chalice on 0 or cast a Lotus Petal to trigger Glaring Fleshraker for that point of damage and that potential banked mana.
Sweet. Do we want to move on to the other deck that is always just sort of simmering in the background, but we weren't really worried about this ban cycle, which is Oops All Spells. And we had the concern that Reanimator and Nadu were bad matchups for Oops, and with them out, Oops is always just hanging out, waiting to come back. Gentlemen, I don't know about you, but I have experienced anecdotally a large uptick in Oops. I'm back to that spot where I'm playing against it once or twice a league that we were at 5 months ago, and I don't think I've lost to it once at all in any league with any deck. What's going on here? Am I just playing better decks, or does this deck actually just suck, or what's going on? Because I genuinely don't think I've lost Oops All Spells in paper or online in 3 months at least.
I feel like people are experimenting with lists right now, and some of the experimentation is not working. I also think that some newer players have tried picking up the decks and they have missed some of the nuance of playing it. So I queued into it a couple of times immediately after the BNR update of like, okay, this deck probably should have had something taken from it, and I'm going to try to play this broken thing, and I don't feel like their lists were good. And then I still have had a couple of the, like, oh, my opponent did a really weird juke that I wasn't quite ready for, and I hedged in the wrong direction. There's still a little bit of that here and there. I still think the play experience is miserable. I am winning more often than not while playing against Oops, and I just hate every minute of playing against it.
So play experience aside, looking at the challenge data, which we all admit isn't super meaningful because, you do get in often at 4-2. The first challenge back, or first challenge post-ban, Oops put 3 copies into the top 8. And then last weekend, it was 3rd and 5th. And Fire Shoes tweeted out like an eyes emoji, like, are we here? Because like Oops is putting up numbers and challenges. And I think there's likely a difference between the players playing it in challenges that are more confident in the deck and maybe Steve from your LGS playing it in a league. Sorry to all people named Steve.
Yeah, Steve sucks. That is well known in my local legacy scene.
Yes, I am not very afraid of the person picking up Oops for the first time. I am afraid of the person who has been jamming Oops for the last year and is one step ahead of the average, deck dump where I don't know what their tech is going to be.
All right, do we want to take a break and then come back for our rights and wrongs section?
Yeah, sounds good. All right, welcome back, folks. So let's talk about our rights and wrongs. And we had previously called out Izzet Delver as something that was going to improve. 100% nailed that. And we absolutely thought that Mystic Forge was going to be a winner. But as it turns out, we couldn't have picked those two things at the same time very well. Because if Is It Delver is going to become extremely good, then that is going to make Mystic Forge worse, as this like very, very aggressive tempo deck with Burn is good against Mystic Forge.
Right. They're kind of incompatible at the top of the metagame together. One of them has to squeeze out the other. Like if the meta is good for Forge, then Is It Delver's struggling, and vice versa.
Now, one of the other things that we called out is that we expected the Demir decks to still be extremely good. And as of right now, as of the time of the recording, Demir tempo is certainly viable, but Is It Delver appears to be the top dog over it. If we're looking at this in metagame percentages, your Demir tempo is probably 4 or 5% of the metagame, whereas Is It Delver is roughly 3 times that at somewhere around 12%.
Yeah, and kind of the thing is happening that was happening before the bans, where if you want to play Demir, which is a perfectly solid, fine deck, you have great interaction, good clock, all the things are still true, and it is reasonably solid versus Is It, there is still a lot of Demir combo tempo decks built around Tamiyo right now. And you're not just deciding, like, there is the decision tree of, if I want to be tempo, would I rather have red or black? And then there's the decision tree of, if I want to be black tempo, why am I not playing Reanimator or Doomsday or one of these other ways to make this deck extremely spicy rather than being super fair down the middle with Nethergoyfs?
And on the other side of the blue-black stuff, we do have that Reanimator.
Right, and we've already talked about this a bit in the episode in a few different spots. Like I said, Reanimator would probably just die without Entomb. Bryant said it would still be good with Looters, and the connective tissue of Tamiyo also going off with Looters. We covered all that ground already. I want to call out the true combo Reanimate decks that are somehow still viable. Like I thought these decks would just eat shit and disappear forever, but this list I'm looking at by Rudeslay, who is a known combo Reanimator grinder on Magic Online, it's listed as first place in a Legacy Challenge. I don't know if that was after Swiss or the final result, but this deck is mono black. It has 4 Atraxa, 4 Grizzlebrand, and 4 of one of my favorite printings of the last 2 years, Colossal Grave Reaver. This is a 6 green-black, 8-drop, 7/6 dragon, has flying. When this enters or attacks, mill 3, and whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put 1 onto the battlefield. So this is an Entomb and a Reanimate on a monster that you're happy to reanimate. And I've seen a lot of people messing around in the Colossal Grave Reaver space. I played against a list the other day that was a hybrid World Gorger Ureni deck. Ureni is a dragon that when it enters or attacks, I believe it's a look at your top 7 and you can shit a dragon into play from those 7. And if you start World Gorging with that, that's all your dragons. Also, World Gorger Dragon is not a legend, which means you can unmarked grave it into the graveyard. That's the nerfed Entomb that we got from Modern Horizons. Like I saw World Gorger getting some action, but I'll go back to this Rudeslay list. He's just got 4 Grizzle, 4 Grave Reaver, 4 Atraxa, 4 Stitcher Supplier. Just dumping them into the graveyard the old-fashioned way. There are no unmarked graves, no looting effects, but there are 4 each of Unmask, Thoughtseize, and Cabal Therapy. The plan here is literally to Stitcher Supplier, RNG mill a monster into the graveyard, or discard it from your own hand using a card to do that. And this is a deck that won a Legacy Challenge. This is sick.
I appeared into Rudeslay on that list in the Friday Night Challenge. Game 3 on the play, Rudeslay went, unmask myself, discard is it called Dread Reaver?
Colossal Grave Reaver.
Discards Colossal Grave Reaver. And then Dark Ritual, animate dead on the Grave Reaver. 3rd card milled as Atraxa. With Atraxa reveals Dark Ritual, Stitcher Supplier, Cabal Therapy. And I'm just like, you gotta be kidding me. And then what I didn't realize is that when the Stitcher Supplier mills, it triggers the Colossal Grave Reaver. Rudeslay's turn ended with 35 power in play, me not having a hand.
Fuck, that's hot.
Yeah, and
It was insane.
Yeah, the Grave Reaver, if that went by just reading it through an auditory medium, whenever 1 or more creature cards are put into your graveyard from your library, put 1 of them onto the battlefield. And this is non-legendary. It does stack. If you get 2 Grave Reavers, you get 2 creatures if you mill over 2 at the same time. And if Grave Reaver mills 3 and hits Stitcher Supplier, that mills 3. That could hit another Stitcher Supplier or another monster. If it hits a Cabal Therapy, you sack the Stitcher Supplier, and then that's another mill 3, which will then Grave Reave. This is nutty bonkers, and I'm so excited that it still exists.
So all of you out there that were saying, like, free Entomb, I do not want to hear it. That card deserved to be banned. Your deck is still viable.
Yeah, I did get a lot of, random folks not really, hating or blaming me or anything. I provide a platform where people could talk about Legacy. And I did get a lot of comments that were like, I understand why the Demir Reanimator deck was too bad, but as a lifelong mono black Reanimator player, I'm now quitting Legacy. Another one of my decks died for Days' Sins, and I'm gone. Thanks for the videos, but I'm unsubscribing and I'm leaving the format. And I had several comments like that. It wasn't just one random person. And you could be that person, or you could be Rudeslay out here breaking Colossal Grave Reaver and winning a challenge for it.